Why does someone suddenly start chasing you the moment you stop pursuing them? This is a question you've probably asked yourself more than once in your life. There are times when we feel ignored, rejected, or simply unappreciated by the very people we give the most attention to. And yet, something strange happens when we decide to step back. Almost magically, the person who once dismissed or overlooked us begins to seek us out, show interest, and even act as if they've always cared. But why does this happen? Is it just coincidence? Or is there something much deeper going on beneath the surface? Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in modern psychology, offers us a powerful explanation that goes far beyond superficial emotional games. According to his studies of the unconscious mind, human attraction, and interpersonal relationships, this phenomenon is anything but accidental. It's not a game. It's the direct result of psychological forces that are always at work, within us and within others, even if we are unaware of them. To begin understanding this, you have to grasp a fundamental principle. Human desire is rooted in perceived value and psychological attention. When you chase someone, when you're constantly available, when you make it clear, either through words or actions, that you are willing to give everything without requiring anything in return, what you are really communicating is that your presence doesn't have to be earned, that it's freely available. And unfortunately, the human mind rarely values what it believes is always there, always accessible. Jung believed that life operates through a balance of opposing energies. In the realm of relationships, this dynamic often appears as a tension between closeness and distance, between desire and availability. When someone senses that you are too available, their unconscious mind begins to categorize you as something guaranteed. And the moment something becomes guaranteed, it tends to lose its perceived value. It's not that people consciously think this way. It's that the unconscious responds to availability by dialing down desire. But the moment you remove yourself from the equation, when you stop chasing, stop texting, stop waiting around, the energy shifts. The other person experiences an unconscious fear, the fear of loss. And fear of loss is one of the most powerful motivators of human behavior. We often don't realize how much we want something until it's no longer easily available. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding the hidden architecture of the human mind. Jung spoke extensively about projection, how we project our inner wounds, insecurities, and desires onto others. When you chase someone, they may begin to project the idea that your worth is somehow tied to their attention, that you need them to feel whole. But when you step back, when you stop placing them at the center of your emotional world, the projection transforms. Suddenly, you're not the needy one. You're not the person waiting to be chosen. You become someone with options, someone with emotional independence, someone who doesn't require anyone's approval to feel complete. That shift is magnetic. Desire, in its rawest form, is not fueled by constant presence. It is sparked by strategic absence. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about genuinely embodying a state where you no longer need to be gotten. You shift from being someone who seeks validation to someone who generates it from within. And that change does not go unnoticed. Jung also taught that the human psyche is always seeking to become whole, to integrate all aspects of itself. When someone feels that they have complete control over another person, that mystery, that edge of curiosity, fades. But when they sense that you're slipping out of reach, when they feel they can no longer predict or influence your actions, they wake up. Their interest is reignited. That curiosity is the psyche's way of trying to reclaim what it feels it might lose. And in that process, the person is driven to reconnect. This is deeply tied to one of Jung's most central ideas, individuation. Individuation is the lifelong journey of becoming whole, of no longer seeking external sources to validate your existence, but instead integrating your inner world. When you chase someone, it often reveals that you haven't yet completed that inner journey. You are, whether consciously or not, placing your self-worth in someone else's hands. You are silently saying, "I need you to feel complete." But when you take your energy back, when you stop trying to extract wholeness from others and instead find it within yourself, something extraordinary happens. You shift from being the one who chases to the one who is pursued. You're no longer emotionally dependent. You're no longer projecting lack. You begin to project completeness, confidence, and peace. And people are irresistibly drawn to that. And this doesn't apply only to romantic relationships. Think of any time in your life when you gave too much, cared too deeply, or pursued someone, be it a friend, a family member, or even a professional contact, only to feel invisible. What happened when you finally walked away? When you stopped sending messages, stopped initiating contact, stopped bending over backwards? Chances are they started to notice. Maybe they called. Maybe they asked about you. Maybe they came back, even if just for a moment. That wasn't magic. That was psychology. That was the unconscious reacting to a change in value perception. But here's the most important part. This is not about pretending to detach just to get someone to come back. It's not about stopping the chase so you can secretly hope they'll return. It's about truly transforming yourself into someone who doesn't need to chase, someone who is emotionally self-sufficient. Because when you truly reach that place, when you no longer need external approval to feel worthy, you naturally start attracting the right people into your life. More importantly, you free yourself. You free yourself from the anxiety, the obsession, the constant need for reassurance. You begin to move through life as someone who knows their own worth, someone who is no longer controlled by fear of loss, someone who creates from abundance instead of lack. Jung once said that what we fear the most is usually what we most need to confront. If you fear losing someone, if you feel the urge to chase and cling, that fear is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's a signal pointing to the places within you that need healing. It's an invitation to ask yourself the harder questions. Why do I feel like my value depends on someone else's attention? What void am I trying to fill? What am I running from within myself? Because here's the truth. The moment you begin to value yourself, truly, deeply, and unapologetically, everything changes. You stop acting out of neediness and start acting out of confidence. You stop trying to be enough for others and start recognizing that you've always been enough for yourself. People sense it. They see it in the way you move, in the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself. You become someone with purpose, with direction, someone whose life no longer revolves around being chosen by others. And that's exactly the kind of person who effortlessly draws others in. Not because you're playing a mind game, but because you've learned how to be whole, all on your own. Carl Jung taught us that true freedom does not lie in the ability to control others, but in liberating ourselves from the very desire to do so. Think about that for a moment. The next time you feel the urge to chase after someone, to pursue them endlessly in an attempt to be seen, valued, or loved, pause. Stop yourself and ask, what am I truly seeking here? Am I moving from a place of trust, or am I acting out of fear? When you begin to truly trust in your own worth, when you understand at a deep level that you don't need to chase anyone, you uncover a powerful secret. You are already enough. You don't need to run after anyone to prove your value. That realization alone is transformative. It's the moment when the chase ends and true connection begins, not with others, but with yourself. People often believe that walking away or stopping the pursuit is a strategy, a game to play. But this isn't about games or manipulation. When people start seeking you out after you've stopped pursuing them, it's not because of psychological tricks. It's because you've begun to radiate something far more powerful than charm or strategy: authenticity, confidence, and self-love. These qualities have a magnetism of their own. They draw people in, not because you're trying to pull them, but because you've become deeply aligned with your own essence. When you stop chasing, it doesn't just change how others see you. It transforms how you see yourself. Jung often emphasized that the human psyche is in a continuous quest for balance. One of the deepest imbalances we carry is the fear of abandonment. And when you're pursuing someone, really chasing them, you're often reacting to that very fear. You believe, often unconsciously, that unless you stay present, show interest, or constantly remind someone of your value, they'll vanish from your life. But that's an illusion, a trick of the unconscious mind. It's a trap that feeds emotional dependency rather than strengthening your sense of identity. When you act from fear, you become predictable. And predictability, by its very nature, dulls desire. The human mind loses interest in what it can always count on to be there, no matter what. That doesn't mean you need to play hard to get or become cold and distant. It means you need to find balance, a place where your essence no longer depends on external validation. Jung illustrated this through his concept of the shadow, that hidden part of ourselves we often reject or deny, yet which continues to shape our behaviors. If your shadow holds a deep hunger for approval or an intense fear of rejection, that energy will leak into your actions and shape the way others see you. The answer to ending the cycle of pursuit is not simply to pull back, it's to do the inner work. Ask yourself, why do I feel the need to chase? Why is it so hard to let things flow naturally? Often, this compulsion comes from an old wound, one we may not even be aware of. A wound born in childhood or forged in past relationships, where we learned that love had to be earned, that affection had to be fought for, that our worth was tied to someone else's attention. But that's not truth. That's a distortion, a belief shaped by pain, not reality. Once you begin to heal those wounds, you start to see more clearly. Real connection does not arise from effortful pursuit, but from unfiltered authenticity. When you stop trying to force a bond, when you redirect that energy toward your own growth and well-being, that's when you begin to attract what truly resonates with your soul. And here's the fascinating part. Those who once overlooked you, who once took you for granted, begin to notice something different. Suddenly, you're not the person scrambling for a reply, not the one chasing affection. You've become someone who respects themselves too much to beg for attention. And the human mind reacts to this in a very particular way. Jung spoke of the principle of compensation. When something becomes scarce or unavailable, the psyche attempts to restore balance by increasing desire. This is why, when someone senses they're losing you, their mind may generate a stronger attraction in response. But this only happens when the change is real, when it stems from a genuine shift in your self-perception. If you're merely stepping back in the hope that the other person will chase you, but deep down you're still clinging to need and lack, that energy is still present, and people feel it. Even when you don't speak it aloud, it radiates. That's why the most powerful move isn't to walk away as a tactic, but to walk away because you've come to know that your wholeness isn't dependent on anyone. When you reach this level of inner clarity, the urge to chase fades naturally. You stop strategizing. You no longer try to engineer reactions or manipulate circumstances. You begin to live from a space of such profound peace that your presence itself becomes captivating, without even trying. Jung once said that what we repress ends up controlling us. If you constantly strive to be accepted, if you feel the need to prove your worth to others, chances are you carry a deep wound around self-image. But here is the liberating truth. You don't need to prove anything. Your value doesn't come from how many people want you, how many relationships you maintain, or how much attention you receive. Your value is inherent. It's built into your very being. And the moment you truly believe that, the world starts to reflect it back to you. When you internalize this truth, your energy shifts in ways that words can't explain. You no longer feel the need to always be present, to send that message, to find a reason to stay in someone's mind. And paradoxically, that's when people begin to think of you more, because your absence creates space. And in that space, the mind starts to fill the void with memories, with curiosity, with wonder. This is why letting go makes you more attractive. Not because you've withdrawn your energy as a tactic, but because you've stopped pouring yourself into people who don't reciprocate. Now, you are someone with purpose, with direction, with a sense of identity that doesn't rely on being validated by others. And that is incredibly powerful. Jung referred to individuation as the process of becoming your most authentic self. It's the path to true personal fulfillment. And part of that path is learning not to need approval to feel whole. We often cling to those who don't value us, thinking that if we lose them, we lose a part of ourselves. But the truth is, you never lose what is truly yours. If someone is meant to be in your life, they'll stay, without you having to chase. And if they leave the moment you stop trying, it means their presence was never based on true connection. It was held together by your effort alone. So ask yourself, how free am I really? Does my happiness depend on others' attention? Do I need external validation to feel complete? Because until you can answer these questions with radical honesty, you'll keep repeating the same patterns, chasing people who were never meant to stay. The day you finally let go, the day you truly understand that you don't need to chase anyone, that's the day your real life begins. That's the day you awaken to your inner power. That energy you used to invest in seeking validation, you can now channel it into building a life that fulfills you. And when that happens, when your transformation comes from within, you no longer need to ask for love. It comes to you naturally. That's when people start to seek you out. Not because of what you say or do, but because of what you radiate. Confidence, serenity, authenticity. But the most important part of this journey is not that others begin to look for you. It's that you no longer need them to. Because now, you understand something profound. Everything you were searching for outside was always within you. And when you finally see that the urge to chase was never about genuine love, but about a deep fear of emptiness, everything changes. You begin to see relationships more clearly. They become mirrors in which you once projected your insecurities. But now, you see yourself for who you truly are: whole, worthy, enough. Carl Jung once said that what disturbs us most in others is often a reflection of something unresolved within ourselves. When you feel ignored, unappreciated, or undervalued by someone else, it's an invitation to turn inward and ask, in what ways am I ignoring myself? What parts of my life am I settling in? Where am I accepting less than I truly deserve? The truth is, no one can make you feel insignificant without your internal permission. Every time you chase after someone, whether it's for their attention, their love, or their validation, you are, perhaps unknowingly, surrendering your power. You're handing over the control of your self-worth, allowing someone else to decide when you matter and when you don't. And in doing so, you become reactive. You start living in a state of constant anticipation, always waiting for a reply, a sign, a gesture that confirms your presence is being noticed. But here's the paradox. The more desperate you are to be seen, the more invisible you become. The more you seek to be validated, the less attractive you appear. Jung emphasized the importance of integrating the shadow, the hidden, often uncomfortable parts of our psyche that we try to deny. In this context, the shadow might be your fear of abandonment, your terror of being irrelevant in someone else's life. Yet we often fail to recognize that this hunger for validation doesn't stem from the present moment. It's a wound from the past. Maybe at some point in your life, you learned that love was conditional, that you had to earn affection, that unless you were always proving your worth, you'd be forgotten. These beliefs become patterns, and patterns become prisons. But the good news is, you are not bound to that prison. You can break free the moment you decide that your value is not dependent on the presence or absence of anyone else. Healing begins when you stop acting from a place of lack and begin living from a sense of inner wholeness. And once you make that shift, something fascinating happens. People are no longer drawn to you because you disappeared. They're drawn to you because your energy has transformed. You've become someone with purpose, someone whose life no longer revolves around being noticed by others. That shift is magnetic. People are instinctively attracted to those who do not beg for attention, to those who are at peace with themselves, whose presence radiates authenticity and self-assurance. And this is where most people misunderstand the process. They think that to stop chasing means to ignore someone, to go silent, to wait for the other person to realize what they're missing. But if deep down, you're still anxious about being noticed, if you're still secretly hoping they'll come back, then nothing has really changed. You're still in the same cycle. Only now, you're waiting passively instead of actively chasing. Real transformation doesn't happen when someone misses you. It happens when you realize that you don't need them to. Think about it. When someone truly values you, when someone genuinely wants to be part of your life, you don't need to keep reminding them. You don't have to prove your worth over and over. You don't have to stress over whether they texted you back, or how fast they replied, or whether they're showing enough interest. Authentic connections flow effortlessly. And when you fully understand that, your entire approach to relationships changes. You stop accepting breadcrumbs of attention. You stop scanning for signs that someone cares. You no longer settle for half-hearted connections, because now you know your worth. And when you know your worth, others can't help but see it too. Jung believed that the unconscious mind is always seeking balance. If someone feels like they have unrestricted access to your time, your energy, and your presence without ever having to earn it, their unconscious mind will start to devalue it. Not because they're bad people, but because that's how the human psyche works. Desire is born in uncertainty, in the sense that something must be earned or discovered, not handed over freely at all times. This doesn't mean you have to become cold or distant. It means you must learn to respect your own energy, your own time, and your own presence enough to not give them away without discernment. When you stop chasing, when you no longer try to convince someone of your value, you begin to attract people who already see it, who never needed convincing to begin with. And this change doesn't come from playing psychological games. It comes from within. It comes from a fundamental shift in your energy. You are no longer the one waiting to be chosen. You are now the one who chooses. You are no longer the one who settles. You are the one who sets boundaries. That's the difference between someone who lives in scarcity and someone who lives in abundance. The biggest mistake many people make is believing that if they stop showing interest, they'll lose the person forever. But here's the real question. Do you truly want someone who only values you when they feel they're losing you? Do you really want to be with someone whose attention is conditional upon your unavailability? Because if the answer is yes, then what you're looking for isn't love, it's validation. And validation is a trap. It's a black hole. No matter how much you receive, it will never feel like enough. You will constantly seek new signs, fresh proof that you matter. You will be stuck in an endless loop of anxiety and insecurity, always afraid of being overlooked. But when your sense of worth comes from within, when your confidence is no longer dependent on how others respond to you, the need to chase anyone simply dissolves. Jung said that the greatest act of self-love is to stop searching outside for what can only be found within. If you feel like someone is ignoring you, if you feel like you're not being given the place you deserve, it is not a signal to try harder. It's a signal to pause and ask yourself, why am I allowing this? What part of me believes I have to accept less than I truly deserve? Because when you answer these questions honestly, you'll realize that it was never really about the other person. It has always been about you, how you see yourself, how you value yourself, how much you believe you are worthy of. And when you stop chasing someone, the most important change doesn't happen in them, it happens in you. You stop being someone who waits, who aches, who clings, and you become someone who chooses, who flows, who trusts. That's the real transformation. That's when everything changes. And once you reach that point, once you truly understand that you don't need to run after anyone to be appreciated, something extraordinary happens. You begin to attract exactly what you always wanted. But this time, it comes from a place of self-love, not neediness. That is the most powerful thing you can ever do. When you finally understand that your worth doesn't require pursuit, that it doesn't depend on someone else's recognition, something shifts inside of you forever. You no longer feel anxious about silence. You no longer care about external approval. You no longer waste your energy trying to prove your value. Because now you understand a fundamental truth. Relationships built from scarcity will always drain you. But relationships rooted in abundance will nourish you. And abundance always begins within you. Carl Jung believed the unconscious mirrors our internal state. If you're filled with despair, you'll draw in relationships that reinforce that despair. If you're haunted by a fear of loss, you'll find yourself in situations that make that fear come true. But if what lives inside you is peace, confidence, and a strong sense of self, the outer world will respond to that energy. The right people will show up. Genuine connections will deepen. And most importantly, you'll stop settling for less than you truly deserve. When you stop chasing, when you realize your worth isn't up for negotiation, others begin to see you differently, not because you've manipulated the situation, but because your energy has shifted. You're no longer begging for attention. You're not trying to prove your value. You're no longer pleading for love. You simply are. And in that state of pure authenticity, you become a kind of magician. But here's the key. You don't do it to get someone back. You do it because you finally understand that the only person you ever truly needed to reclaim is yourself. This isn't about playing games with someone else's mind. It's about transforming your own. Because once you stop searching outside for what already exists within you, everything else starts to flow naturally. At this moment, I want you to ask yourself one final question. What would shift in your life if you genuinely trusted your own worth? How would your relationships change if you no longer felt the need to chase anyone? How would your perspective on the world evolve if instead of waiting for validation, you began living from your true self? The answers to those questions can transform your entire life. They could be the turning point between remaining stuck in a cycle of neediness or starting to build relationships rooted in security and trust. And that transformation begins now with a choice. The choice to let go, the choice to trust, the choice to choose yourself. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave your comment below and tell me which part made you reflect the most. Because every time you engage, every time you share, you're helping more people find this message. Together, we can bring this content to those who still feel trapped in emotional dependency, to those who need to be reminded that their worth is not defined by anyone else. So, become part of this community. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Because here, we don't just talk about relationships, we dive into personal growth, into how to transform your life from within. And if you're ready to keep learning, explore more content on this channel. Every video is crafted to help you awaken, to help you uncover your true power, and to guide you toward a life lived with intention. Remember, now is the time to change. Choose your worth. Choose your peace. And above all, choose to live from your most authentic self. I'll see you in the next video. Carl Jung once said that within each of us exists a mystery so deep that when we explore it, we don't just find answers. We uncover the key to transforming our lives. Yet so often, we look outward for solutions. We search for validation, for love, for purpose in the external world, hoping to find something or someone that will make us feel whole. But Jung challenges us to shift our perspective. He invites us to turn inward. Why do so many of us feel lost, disconnected, or unfulfilled? It's not because the world has failed us. It's because we have stopped listening to ourselves. We have stopped prioritizing our own needs, our own truths, and our most authentic essence. Think about it. How many times have you placed the needs of others above your own? Perhaps in a relationship, at work, or even among friends and family. Little by little, you have dimmed your own light, molding yourself to fit expectations that may not even align with your own values. And while you do this, something deep inside you whispers, "When will it be my turn?" Jung tells us that this whisper is not just a fleeting thought. It is a call from your unconscious. It is your true self demanding attention, urging you to recognize its importance. Real healing cannot come from external sources. No matter how much you seek love, validation, or approval from others, if you haven't given that love to yourself first, you will always feel an emptiness. But that emptiness is not a flaw. It is a signal. It is your unconscious telling you that it's time for change. It's time to look inward, to confront the parts of yourself that you have ignored or repressed for so long. Perhaps you have felt this call in moments of crisis, a breakup, a job that no longer fulfills you, a constant sense of emotional exhaustion. These moments, though painful, are opportunities. Jung believed that the unconscious never abandons us. It constantly sends us signals, and those signals often arrive in the form of chaos. But chaos is not something to fear. It is a message. It is a clear sign that something in your life is not aligned with your true self. When you prioritize others over yourself, you are sending a message to the universe and to your own unconscious that you do not consider yourself valuable enough. But Jung reminds us that our relationship with ourselves defines everything else. If you do not treat yourself with love, respect, and care, how can you expect the world to do so? The first step toward change is to listen. Listen to that discomfort, that dissatisfaction. Stop trying to silence it with external distractions and allow yourself to feel it, to understand it. Because beneath that discomfort lies a truth waiting to be discovered, the truth of who you really are. And to reach that truth, you must prioritize yourself. You must make yourself an absolute priority. Imagine for a moment how your life would change if you truly prioritized yourself. If every decision you made, from the smallest to the most significant, aligned with what you truly need, what makes you feel alive. For many, this might seem like an impossible dream. But Jung shows us that it is not only possible, it is essential for our healing and growth. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that prioritizing ourselves is selfish. We were taught that taking care of others, sacrificing our desires, and always putting others first is the right thing to do. And while helping others is noble, doing so at the expense of our essence leaves us empty. Jung spoke of the importance of integrating all parts of ourselves, including those we suppress. And often, the part we suppress the most is the one crying out for attention, for self-love. That internal disconnection does not disappear simply because we ignore it. It manifests in other ways, in draining relationships, in jobs that leave us unfulfilled, in that constant feeling that something is missing. And the most painful truth? The more you ignore your true self, the more intense that emptiness becomes. Jung said that there is no greater burden than living a life that is not authentic. To prioritize yourself means to make peace with your shadows. It means to look at those parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable, that scare you, and understand that they are not your enemies. They are simply parts of you that need to be acknowledged. Because at the end of the day, the only person who will be with you every step of your life is yourself. And if you do not prioritize yourself, who will? Many people believe that prioritizing themselves means saying no to others. But that's not true. Prioritizing yourself means saying yes to you. It means giving yourself permission to rest when you need to pursue your dreams, to surround yourself with people who truly value you. It means understanding that your time, your energy, and your love are valuable and should not be wasted on things or people that do not resonate with you. Jung spoke of the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming who you truly are. This process does not happen automatically. It requires intention, effort, and above all, courage. Because prioritizing yourself will not always be easy. There will be people who don't understand, who may even be upset that you are no longer putting their needs above your own. But Jung reminds us that this is the price of authenticity. And while it may be difficult, it is also incredibly liberating. When you decide to prioritize yourself, something incredible begins to happen. It's as if the universe, seeing your decision to value yourself, starts to respond differently. The people who drained you begin to fade away, and in their place, new people appear. People who inspire you, who support you, who vibrate at the same frequency as you. This is not a coincidence. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, those seemingly random yet profoundly meaningful events that occur when you are aligned with yourself. Synchronicity is not just a coincidence, it is a confirmation that you are on the right path. But to reach this point, you must be brutally honest with yourself. Ask yourself, what relationships, habits, or beliefs are blocking my growth? What am I holding on to that no longer resonates with me? These are not easy questions to answer. In fact, they can be deeply uncomfortable, but they are necessary. Jung once said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it first. And to accept something, we must first confront it." One of the greatest obstacles we face is the fear of letting go. We cling to what is familiar, even if it hurts us, because the unknown terrifies us. But Jung taught that true growth only happens when we dare to explore those unknowns within ourselves. That fear you feel is not a signal to stop. It is an invitation to move forward. Because on the other side of that fear is the version of yourself that you have always longed to become. When you begin to prioritize yourself, you do more than just heal your inner wounds. You shift the very dynamics of your relationships. You stop accepting less than you deserve. You stop surrounding yourself with people who do not value your time and energy. And most importantly, you start setting boundaries. Because as Jung said, we cannot give to others what we do not give to ourselves. If you do not take care of yourself, if you do not love yourself, how can you expect to care for and love others in an authentic way? Prioritizing yourself also means reconnecting with your dreams. Maybe you have spent years chasing goals that were never truly yours, expectations placed upon you by your parents, by society, by your friends. But now, you have the opportunity to pause and ask yourself, what do I truly want? What makes me feel alive? Jung reminds us that life has meaning when we live in alignment with our essence, and that essence can only be defined by you. This journey is not linear. There will be days when you feel inspired, as if everything is falling into place. But there will also be days when you doubt yourself, when external noise tries to silence your inner voice. In those moments, remember this: every small step you take toward your authenticity is an act of courage. And that courage does not just transform your life, it inspires others to do the same. When you decide to make yourself a priority, you are not just choosing a path of personal healing, you are choosing a path of deep transformation. Prioritizing yourself does not mean being perfect or having all the answers. It means being honest with yourself, listening to your needs, and respecting your limits. Carl Jung said that the journey toward wholeness begins when we accept our shadows, those parts of ourselves that we have avoided or rejected for so long. Often these shadows include aspects of our personality that we learned to hide because they were not accepted by others. Maybe it is your emotions, your desires, or even your talents. But those shadows, uncomfortable as they may be, hold immense power. Jung explained that integrating our shadows not only liberates us, but also grants us access to a source of energy and creativity that was previously blocked. Imagine for a moment how your life would change if you were no longer afraid to be yourself. If you could express your truth without worrying about the judgment of others. This freedom is the gift of prioritizing yourself. When you choose to embrace every part of yourself, even the ones you consider imperfect, you begin to live from a place of authenticity. And when you live authentically, the right people, the right opportunities, and the right experiences start to flow into your life. This does not mean the path will be easy. There will be challenges, moments when you question if you are making the right decision. But every time you face those moments of doubt, you have the opportunity to choose yourself again. And with each choice, you strengthen your relationship with yourself, build your confidence, and take one more step toward wholeness. One of the biggest fears when prioritizing ourselves is the fear of rejection. We worry that by setting boundaries or choosing what is best for us, the people we love will abandon us. But Jung reminds us that the relationships truly worth keeping are those that respect our authenticity. If someone walks away because you choose to prioritize yourself, then that person was not meant to be in your life for the long term. It is important to remember that prioritizing yourself does not mean you stop caring for others. It means ensuring that your well-being is balanced with the well-being of those around you. Because when you take care of yourself, when you give yourself the time and space to recharge your energy, you can show up in your relationships from a place of fullness, not from depletion. This does not just improve your life, it enhances the quality of your connections with others. When you begin to prioritize yourself, something magical happens. The dynamics in your life start to change. Relationships that once felt draining or exhausting either begin to transform or naturally dissolve. This is not an accident. It is a reflection of your inner growth. As you evolve, the universe aligns to support that evolution. Carl Jung taught us that relationships act as mirrors. What we project onto others is a direct reflection of what is happening within us. If you do not value yourself, you will attract people who do not value you either. But the moment you begin to prioritize yourself, you set a new standard, and the people in your life react to that change. Some may not understand your decision to prioritize yourself. They might accuse you of being selfish or distant, but these reactions are nothing more than reflections of their own insecurities. Jung would call these responses projections, expressions of their inner struggles, rather than genuine reflections of you. That is why it is crucial not to take them personally. At the end of the day, prioritizing yourself is not about others. It is about you. It is about honoring your truth and choosing what is best for your well-being. But often, the greatest resistance does not come from others. It comes from within. A small voice in your mind might whisper, "Who am I to put myself first? Isn't it my responsibility to take care of others?" This voice is not yours. It is the result of years of conditioning, of a culture that often glorifies self-sacrifice at the expense of mental and emotional health. But Jung reminds us that we cannot give to others what we do not have for ourselves. If you do not cultivate your own well-being, you cannot genuinely offer it to others. Prioritizing yourself also means learning to let go of what no longer serves you, what no longer aligns with your essence. This includes toxic relationships, destructive habits, and limiting beliefs. Letting go is rarely easy. We often cling to what is familiar because it gives us a false sense of security. But Jung teaches us that true security comes from within, from our connection to our inner being, not from external circumstances. When you release what no longer belongs to you, you create space for what is truly meant for you. It is like tending a garden. By removing the weeds, you allow the flowers to flourish. This process can be uncomfortable at first, but the results are transformative. You begin to attract relationships that nourish you, opportunities that inspire you, and experiences that resonate with your deepest truth. And then, something powerful happens. You realize that you do not need to justify your worth. You do not need to prove to anyone that you deserve happiness or that your dreams are valid. Your worth is inherent, simply because you exist. This realization changes everything. It frees you from the constant pursuit of external validation and grants you permission to live life on your own terms. The journey to this transformation is not quick nor linear. There will be moments of doubt, relapses into old patterns, and unexpected challenges. But every time you choose to prioritize yourself, you take one more step toward wholeness. And although the work is internal, its effects ripple into every area of your life, your relationships, your career, your health, and most importantly, your inner peace. The inner peace that comes from prioritizing yourself is priceless. It is as if, after years of living in a constant state of tension, you can finally take a deep breath. This peace does not mean that life will be perfect. It means that, regardless of the challenges you face, you remain grounded in yourself and in your truth. Carl Jung taught that true power does not come from external control, but from connection with our inner essence. When you start living from a place of authenticity, something interesting happens. Life becomes simpler. Not because problems disappear, but because you stop complicating things by trying to fit into molds that were never designed for you. You free yourself from the need to please everyone and start focusing on what truly matters: your purpose, your passions, your well-being. Jung spoke of the self as the core of our psyche, the center that balances our consciousness and our unconscious. Prioritizing yourself is an act of connection with that self. It is recognizing that your life has value, not because of what you do or what others think of you, but simply because you exist. This realization is profoundly liberating. It gives you the courage to make decisions that once seemed impossible, like leaving a relationship that no longer brings you joy or pursuing a dream you had postponed out of fear. But prioritizing yourself does not always mean making drastic, life-altering changes. Sometimes it is about small, everyday acts, saying no when you truly mean it, giving yourself permission to rest without guilt, investing in something that helps you grow. These small actions accumulate over time. Slowly, you begin to build a life that reflects who you truly are, instead of a life dictated by the expectations of others. One of the most powerful ideas Jung left us with was the concept of individuation, the process of becoming the person you were meant to be. This path is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. Every time you choose to prioritize yourself, you take another step on that path. And with each step, you get closer to wholeness, to a life that is not only authentic, but also deeply meaningful. As you transform, you also transform the world around you. Carl Jung believed that the connection between our inner world and the external world is undeniable. When you begin to heal internally, you start to see how your relationships, opportunities, and surroundings align with this new version of yourself. It's as if the universe itself is responding to your decision to live in harmony with who you truly are. This transformation may be subtle at first. Perhaps you notice that certain people begin to drift away, while others enter your life with a completely different energy, one that resonates with your newfound sense of self. Maybe you suddenly experience a clarity that you lacked before, or you find yourself making decisions with more confidence and fewer doubts. These are the natural results of prioritizing yourself, of listening to your needs, and of honoring what truly matters to you. When you start to make yourself a priority, something within you shifts in an irreversible way. It's as if everything that once seemed impossible or out of reach suddenly begins to make sense. You come to the powerful realization that you don't need external validation. You don't need to shape yourself to fit into a world that often feels disconnected from authenticity. Instead, you begin to understand that your greatest power comes from within. Carl Jung left us with a profound message. The power you seek is already inside you. Your task is to dare to explore it, to embrace every part of yourself, even the aspects you once rejected. This journey is not easy, but it is the most rewarding path you can take. When you choose to prioritize yourself, you are telling the world that you deserve to live a life that is true to who you are. And that decision doesn't just affect you. It has a ripple effect that extends far beyond your own life. When you change, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon of light for those still trapped in the darkness of their own doubts and fears. Think about that for a moment. By choosing to heal, to grow, to stand in your own power, you become a living example for others who are searching for their own strength. Now, it's your turn to take action. Reflect on your life and ask yourself, what can I do today to prioritize myself? Maybe it means setting a boundary. Maybe it means saying no to something that no longer serves you. Or perhaps it's as simple as taking a quiet moment to truly listen to what your heart needs. It doesn't matter how small the step is. What matters is that you take it. Every action counts. Every decision adds up. And before you know it, you will have transformed your life in ways you never imagined. And here's the most important part. This is not a journey you have to take alone. We are in this together. If this message resonated with you, if you feel that now is the time to prioritize yourself and take control of your life, share this with others. Help spread this truth so that more people can begin their own journey of inner healing. Leave a comment below and tell me, what part of this message spoke to your heart? What are you going to change starting today? Your experience could be the inspiration that someone else needs to take their first step. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming messages. Every time you interact with this content, whether by sharing, commenting, or simply giving it a like, you are helping to build a community where knowledge and personal growth can flourish. Together, we can reach more people who need to hear this. Remember, everything begins with you. When you choose to prioritize yourself, when you choose to heal and reconnect with who you truly are, you are creating a change that not only impacts your own life, but also the world around you. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this transformation. I'll see you in the next video. And never forget, the change you seek starts within you. If you've ever felt out of place in a conversation, if you've ever looked around and wondered why people try so hard to fit in, If you've ever felt like social interactions are a ridiculous performance you have no interest in playing, then this video is meant for you. And if you've never felt that way, maybe it's time to ask yourself, have you been living a lie? Because today, we're going to explore an uncomfortable truth. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, saw it with piercing clarity. Most people live trapped in a persona. They dress, act, and speak according to how they think they should, not because it's who they truly are, but because they've been conditioned to seek approval. And now, the question no one dares to ask: approval from whom? Think about it. How many meaningless conversations have you endured just to avoid seeming rude? How many jokes have you laughed at that didn't even amuse you? How many times have you felt like every social exchange is a transaction? A silent trade of your authenticity in exchange for acceptance. And here's the real question: at what cost? Jung understood something crucial. The more conscious you become, the more absurd the performance looks, not because you're arrogant, but because you see what others refuse to see. You see the masks. You see the lies dressed as politeness. You see the fragility of a world built on collective illusion, where everyone is desperately searching for validation in someone else's eyes. And the most unsettling part? You see that most people would rather not see it at all. Society isn't built to make you think. It's designed to distract you. Because when you begin to think deeply, you begin to notice the cracks. You realize that most relationships are hollow. Most conversations are just noise. And the effort to fit in is just a slow form of self-erasure. And here lies the paradox. If you're aware enough to notice this, you're also aware enough to feel the loneliness it brings. Because let's be honest, the more you awaken, the less you belong. And people can sense it. They feel your resistance to join in the collective hysteria. They notice you don't partake in the social rituals with the same blind enthusiasm. And that unsettles them, because your very presence threatens the fragile bubble they live in. Jung didn't sugarcoat it. Loneliness is often the fate of the individuated soul. And it hurts. It hurts because society has taught you that happiness is in connection, in belonging, in circles of friends. But what happens when those connections are shallow? What happens when you realize that the price of socializing is often your own authenticity? What happens is you start to pull away. You begin to treasure your time more than someone's approval. And then something fascinating unfolds. At first, solitude feels like punishment, but slowly it becomes privilege. Because in solitude, you find what society tries to keep from you at all costs: inner peace. Jung knew this better than anyone. To him, becoming conscious was both a gift and a burden. The more you understand the world, the less enchanted you become by it. The more you see the depths of human nature, the less you want to play its game. And here's where many get it wrong. They think this is a call to misanthropy, to hate others, to reject all human contact. But that's not what this is. This is about discernment. It's about knowing the difference between authentic connection and social obligation. It's about giving yourself permission to choose when and with whom to engage. Instead of following the current of expectation, it's about realizing that true intelligence doesn't seek external validation. But now comes the most intriguing part. The moment you stop chasing acceptance, something shifts. People feel it. They see that you're not desperate to fit in, that your identity doesn't collapse if you're not invited to the next gathering. And that confuses them, because most live chained to the need to be seen, heard, and approved. But you, by not playing that game, you become a mystery that intimidates, a mystery that fascinates. Because the great irony is, the less you crave social validation, the more power you hold over it. True freedom begins the moment you stop worrying about what others think of you. So the next time someone tells you that you should socialize more, that you should make an effort to be more outgoing, to be like everyone else, remember this: you are not the one who is mistaken. You are simply someone who has seen the truth. And the truth, for most people, is far too uncomfortable to accept. This is where things get even more fascinating. Because once you realize you don't need social validation, once you truly internalize that most interactions are mere performance, something else becomes visible: silence. Silence becomes your ally, and that terrifies others. We live in a world where noise is constant. Social media, trivial conversations, news designed to provoke reactions. Everything is built to keep you in a state of perpetual distraction, because silence forces you to think, and thinking is dangerous. Carl Jung didn't just understand this, he lived it. He spent much of his life withdrawn from the collective noise, immersed in deep thought, symbolic analysis, and introspection. It wasn't misanthropy, it was awareness. Jung understood that the external clamor only clouds the inner world. This is where most people go wrong. They confuse solitude with isolation. But there's a massive difference between being alone and being isolated. Being alone is a choice of power, choosing depth over surface, quality over quantity. Isolation, on the other hand, is a sentence. It is what the one who longs to belong feels when he can't. The one who tries to be accepted, but never quite fits. And here's the irony: the one who desperately seeks acceptance will always be rejected. But the one who rejects it by choice is never truly alone. Because when you walk your own path, without concern for others' approval, you attract those who truly matter. People who think, people who question, people who don't need to fill every second of their lives with meaningless noise. Here's the truth: intelligence is not antisocial. Intelligence simply rejects the trivial. Think about this. The greatest minds in history were not antisocial, but they also didn't waste their time in empty talk. Da Vinci spent years immersed in his work, without the need to share every thought. Nietzsche stepped away from society when he realized his ideas were too much for conventional minds. Tesla worked obsessively on his inventions, and few understood him. All of them were seen as eccentric, strange, difficult. Why? Because they didn't submit to the norm. They didn't follow the script of common social life. Here's the secret: modern social life is nothing more than a predictable sequence of routines meant to keep you inside the system. From birth, you're taught that acceptance is the goal, that you need friends, that you must belong to a group, that isolation is wrong. But no one tells you that most groups only exist out of fear of being alone, not true connection. No one tells you that many people with large social circles feel deeply empty. No one tells you that the greatest ideas, the most radical revolutions, the most important discoveries were born from minds that dared to break away from the noise. But here's where many people get it wrong. They think the solution is to reject society entirely, to become a hermit, to disconnect completely. But that's not it. True power isn't in fleeing the world. It's in knowing when to engage and when to retreat. It's in moving through the shadows when the noise gets too loud and emerging with impact when it matters most. Think of great strategists. They weren't always at the center of the battle, but when they appeared, their presence could not be ignored. Those who truly understand life are neither slaves to society nor fugitives from it. They are silent players. They make their moves without announcing them. They build in the dark, and by the time the world notices them, it's too late, because they've already won, without needing attention. Carl Jung believed that superior consciousness was destined for solitude, not as punishment, but as advantage, because only in solitude can something of value be built. But what happens to those who don't understand this? What happens to those who believe happiness lies in the approval of others? They remain trapped in a cycle of dependency. Every photo they upload, every story they share, every opinion they express, it's all calculated to provoke a reaction, a like, a comment, some form of validation that convinces them they exist. But here's the brutal truth. If your existence depends on the reactions of others, then you've never truly existed. You're merely a reflection of what others expect from you. And that's the exact opposite of being free. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want without consequences. It's not needing anyone's approval to do what you genuinely desire. It's not relying on noise to feel alive. It's being able to sit in complete silence, alone, without anxiety, without needing to fill every empty space with distraction. And if you can't do that, then you're not free. You're a prisoner of noise. Carl Jung understood this more deeply than most. That's why he turned inward, not as an act of rejection, but as a path to clarity. Because only from a distance can you see the truth clearly. Only in silence can you truly hear your own voice. And if you've made it this far, it's because deep down, you already knew it. You knew something in modern social life felt wrong. You sensed that many of your interactions are merely ritual. You knew real growth doesn't happen in noise, but in introspection. So now the question is, will you have the courage to accept it? Because once you do, there's no turning back. The world becomes intolerable. Small talk feels absurd. The need to fit in disappears. And all that remains is the truth. The truth that solitude isn't a punishment. It's a privilege reserved only for those strong enough to endure it. You can no longer lie to yourself. You can't force yourself to enjoy what once felt normal. You can't pretend empty conversations fulfill you, or that external validation means anything. And that is the point of no return. Terrifying, isn't it? Because most people spend their lives trying to belong, making silent sacrifices to be accepted, silencing parts of themselves to keep others comfortable. But you can't do that anymore, because now you understand something most never will. Life isn't about fitting in. It's about discovering what truly resonates with you and having the courage to follow that path, even if it means walking it alone. And here's the most brutal paradox of all. The more you dare to be yourself, the more magnetic you become. Because people are starving for authenticity, but very few are brave enough to be authentic. And those who are, those who move without fear, who need no approval, those are the ones who become truly free. There's a kind of person in this world who doesn't chase attention, doesn't beg for validation, and doesn't mold themselves to fit society's expectations. They walk quietly, often unnoticed at first, but there's something about them, something so grounded, so authentic, that you can't help but feel drawn in. These individuals aren't trying to be followed. They don't craft personas or play roles to gain admiration. And yet, they end up becoming the ones people look to, the ones who spark change, the ones others remember long after they've left the room. Why? Because true inner freedom is rare. It's almost sacred. In a world where most people wear masks to survive, someone who lives without one becomes almost magnetic. Their presence speaks louder than their words. Their silence carries more power than most people's noise. And once you've seen it, once you've felt it, it becomes impossible to forget. It awakens something in you, a kind of remembering, a whisper from your soul saying, "This is what I've been looking for." And now that you've felt it, now that a seed has been planted in your awareness, I have to ask you something important. What are you going to do with this? You can ignore it, of course. You can pretend this moment never happened, scroll to the next distraction, go back to the version of your life that fits neatly into expectations. That version where you smile when you're supposed to, agree when you don't want to, and follow rules that were written for someone else. You can do that. It's the easier way, the safer way, the path of least resistance, the one where you never have to face yourself in the mirror and ask the hard questions. But there's another path, a much more difficult one. It's the path of awakening, of discomfort, of peeling back all the layers you've spent your whole life building. It's the path where you start to see the world for what it really is, not just through the lens you've been taught to use, but through your own eyes, your own truth. It's the path where you realize you will never be fully understood by most people, and you make peace with that, where you stop betraying your soul just to belong in rooms that don't resonate with your energy, where you let go of the desperate need to be liked, to be accepted, to be normal, and instead you begin to live from a place of deep alignment. You begin to make choices not based on what others want from you, but on what your inner self is calling for. You start showing up as the most honest version of yourself, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it means standing alone. And let me tell you something, this path is not easy. It's lonely at times, it's raw. You will shed old versions of yourself like dead skin. You will grieve illusions you once held as truth. You'll lose people. You'll question everything. But you will gain something greater than all of that. You will find yourself. And once you do, nothing can ever compare to that clarity. You'll no longer need to fit in, because you'll realize you were never meant to. You'll no longer chase love or acceptance, because you'll see that you are love, and you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. There are two kinds of people in this world, those who adapt to survive and those who awaken to thrive. The first type chooses comfort, familiarity, and approval. They live quiet lives filled with silent compromises, and that's okay. Everyone has their own path. But the second type, they are the ones who wake up. They see through the illusion. They feel the pull of something deeper. And once they taste that freedom, there's no going back. They may be misunderstood. They may walk alone for a while. But they leave a mark, not through fame or fortune, but through presence, through purpose, through the way their energy changes everything around them. So now, I ask you again, which kind of person are you? Are you ready to step outside the illusion? Are you ready to stop hiding, to stop settling, to stop playing small? Are you ready to live your truth, even if it makes other people uncomfortable? Because if you've made it this far, if you're still listening, then I know there's something inside you that's been waiting for this, waiting for someone to put into words what you've always felt but couldn't explain, waiting for a sign that you're not alone in this awakening. So I invite you to do something simple but powerful. Leave a comment that says, "Silence is power." Let the world know you're ready to live by your own rules, not the ones handed down to you. Let others like you find their way. And if something in this message resonated, if it stirred something inside you, if it reminded you of who you really are beneath all the noise, then subscribe, because this is just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover, so much more to awaken within you. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, keep walking your path, even if no one else understands it yet, especially if no one else understands it yet. That's how you know you're onto something real.